Welcome to Tree of Life Spiritual Podcast, discussing the nature of God, self, enlightenment, and the spiritual path. My name is Theresa Lorraine. I am an independent scholar, a spiritual writer, a poet, and a person of faith. After experiencing a profound illumination at 12 years old, I've spent my life researching anthropology, psychology, theology, and mystic experiences, seeking to understand how this experience of higher love and interconnectedness is witnessed within all religions. Born into an atheist family and baptized Christian at 20 years old, I study meditation at my local Vedanta society, and I have never held back from learning about diverse religions or cultures. My faith is the root of my life. I see the world as my church, love as my religion, and life as my spiritual practice. The following podcast episodes can be found in the Book of the Tree of Life, released in February 2025 and available as a free download on Amazon, bn.com, Google Play, Kobo Books, Apple Books, and more. Please see the episode description for a link to the book. Feel free to download a free copy if you want to read along. Hinduism. Let us open with a well-known quote from the Rig Veda. Truth is one, sages call it by various names. Hinduism is a system of religious beliefs native to India. It is a practice of immense diversity, with a broad tradition informed by Aryan, Dravidian, and many other cultures. By studying the scope of Hinduism, we can observe new schools of religious thought rise up every few hundred years, leading to a splitting off of various practices, which leads to a revival of spirituality and philosophy. Religious texts in Hinduism can be traced back over 3,000 years. Its earliest text, the Rig Veda, translated directly as praise knowledge, dates back to approximately 1000 BCE. The quote at the beginning of this chapter, "Truth is one, sages call it by various names," is a famous quote from the ancient Rig Veda and fits well with our philosophy of the Tree of Life. Considering the existence of this sacred tree as an archetypal symbol within religion, it would seem that truth is tangibly one. Across time and history, enlightened sages have most certainly called this truth by various names. Switching from the Judeo-Christian language found in Kabbalah to the Eastern terminology found in Hinduism can be a bit jarring for spiritual students, and this is by design. Differing schools of theology want to maintain a certain amount of separateness for the sake of honoring tradition. We might say there is unity in diversity in spiritual practice, or that the same truth is called by various names. But differing schools of theology meticulously craft their language to make sure each tradition remains distinct from the next. And this is for a reason. Throughout history, religion has been more than just revelation, enlightenment, or knowledge of God. Traditionally, religion has functioned as an authoritarian structure, establishing law, order, and social identity within a country or community. And so many schools of theology are still concerned with maintenance of these old authoritarian structures. Without direct revelation, theological schools cannot strike boldly through the obscurity of language to clarify or assert new doctrine. And that's okay. We shouldn't be making bold claims about God willy-nilly. Tradition is a wonderful guide and a compass to point us in the right direction in the continually evolving story of religion. That's why anyone who receives an experience of revelation or enlightenment must be in alignment with world tradition. They must validate those who've come before. The same truth must be present, even if it's called by various names. It's not a bad thing for different religions to remain separate. Diversity is beautiful, and variety is the spice of life. It's simply nice to enjoy the differences between a Buddhist temple and a Catholic monastery. If every flower in the garden were the same, then the garden would lose its special beauty. The artwork, symbolism, and stories related to each different world religion gives it distinct character, and certain students might gravitate toward one style of teaching as opposed to another. There is nothing inherently wrong about diversity, but it does mean those who've experienced God's revelation, sages, saints, or otherwise, must continually clear the brush from the road so that the unity within diversity is not smothered or lost over time. And so we need to bridge the language gap if we want to start making any connections between Eastern and Western schools of thought. We must weave the string of truth through many beads. We shall do this carefully, offering examples from holy texts to support our 3 points of intersection, and referring to knowledge imparted by special revelation or enlightenment as often as possible, by means of bolstering and clarifying tradition. Let us explore our 3 points of intersection in Hinduism: the nature of God, the nature of enlightenment, and the tree of life. In the following commentary, I will use the following sources: the Mundaka Upanishad, the Bhagavad Gita, fondly shortened as the Gita, and the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, an enlightened guru from the 19th century who was known for mastering many practices within Hinduism. Section 1. What is an Upanishad? In brief, the word Upanishad means sitting down near. Each individual Upanishad is an ancient poem containing mystical and spiritual truths, thought to be universal to all of mankind, that stand apart from the Vedas. The Vedas are the main holy texts of Hinduism. These ancient hymns and philosophies are well worth exploring for the impassioned spiritual seeker. Try to imagine the world as it was 3,000 years ago, a world vastly different than our own, where towns and villages in India were separated by great expanses of forest. Schools were built in these forests for people seeking the truth of their own existence. In this ancient world, before video games, TV, and modern transportation, spiritual seekers called yogis wandered the land in search of the meaning of life. They went deep into meditation, sifting through layers of mind until they struck upon pure consciousness, the eternal self. These early explorers of consciousness were the first to discover what the Buddhists would later call enlightenment, or for Christians, salvation. These ancient forest schools studied consciousness as a science, down to the very parts of the brain associated with these transcendent awakenings. Then they wrote it all down in the form of sacred poetry, and these ancient poems have survived thousands of years, now broadly referred to as the Upanishads. Therefore, the earliest of the Upanishads apply to most Hindu religions and do not specifically belong to a single sect under the umbrella of this diverse belief system. They include broadly understood topics such as karma, Atman, the realization of Brahman or God, and samsara. We can see the Upanishads as more universal in nature, with a broad influence on diverse schools of thought within Hinduism. And so that's my reason for using them to discuss our 3 points of intersection. The following quotes are from the Mundaka Upanishad, used for the sake of commentary and discussion, from a collection translated by Eknath Iswaran. Section 2. The nature of God in Hinduism. The Lord of Love is above name and form. He is present in all and transcends all. Unborn, without body and without mind, from him comes every body and mind. He is the source of space, air, fire, water, and the earth that holds us all. Fire is his head, the sun and moon his eyes, the heavens his ears, the scriptures his voice, the air his breath, the universe his heart, and the earth his footrest. The Lord of Love is the innermost self of all. Mundaka Upanishad. God, or Brahman, is called the Lord of Love in the Mundaka Upanishad, which also reveals Brahman's immanent nature in the following phrase: the Lord of Love is the innermost self of all. The name Lord of Love in the Mundaka Upanishad should be somewhat familiar to anyone coming from a Judeo-Christian background, as the Bible tells us God is love. According to the poem quoted above, this Lord of Love has both a transcendent and an immanent quality. First, we're told the Lord's presence transcends all things. Unborn, without body and without mind, he is present in all and transcends all. Second, we are told the Lord is within all things. The Lord of Love is the innermost self of all. This supports our thesis about the nature of God. All of creation exists inside of the divine as one. Likewise, the divine is one with his creation. We dwell inside of the divine, and the divine dwells inside of us, and on the most authentic, deepest level of our being, we are that. We can call this comprehension non-dualism. By this, we can make a connection between Jewish mysticism and Hinduism. Just as the Lord of Love is throughout and within all things, so is the divine essence revealed in Kabbalah existing throughout and within all things. In a tangible way, two different cultures thousands of years apart are referring to the same knowledge of God as revealed through sacred experience. It would appear the same divine revelation has inspired both Eastern and Western philosophy. Remember, in the teachings of Kabbalah, we are to understand that even a stone is a thing pervaded by divinity. So, this is the divinity referred to in the Mundaka Upanishad as the Lord of Love. In Kabbalah, we know it as the Holy Spirit. In Christian terms, we know this as God's immanence. In conclusion, by peeling back these layers of diverse language and peering at the brilliant light of revelation beneath, we can see that the same eternal essence, the same understanding of God's divine nature, has been documented by both Jewish and Hindu tradition. It's almost as though two separate traditions have experienced the same purity of divine revelation, leading to the same comprehension of God's transcendence and God's immanence. Therefore, the illumined sages of the Upanishads stand toe-to-toe with the Jewish prophets, as they should. For if absolute truth exists, it can only be one. I know for some this might be a radical claim, bordering on heresy for both Jewish and Hindu Orthodox thinkers, but I am simply drawing your eye to what already exists within holy tradition. So, let God put these heretical ideas to good use. Section 3. The nature of enlightenment, liberation, or moksha. The following quote is from the Mundaka Upanishad, Part 3, Verse 2, translated by Eknath Iswaran. The wise have attained the unitive state and see only the resplendent Lord of Love. Desiring nothing in the physical world, they have become one with the Lord of Love. Those who dwell on and long for sense pleasure are born in a world of separateness. But let them realize they are the self, and all separateness will fall away. Not through discourse, not through the intellect, not even through study of the scriptures can the self be realized. The self reveals himself to the one who longs for the self. Those who long for the self with all their heart are chosen by the self as their own. This beautiful poem contains a lot of information about the nature of liberation, also called self-realization, moksha, or enlightenment within Hinduism. Let's try to unpack it a little bit at a time, beginning with the first line, the wise have attained the unitive state. According to the Mundaka Upanishad, attaining this liberation means entering into a unitive state or a state of oneness with the Lord of Love. This can be compared to the same state previously discussed in Kabbalah, where enlightenment is described as being in the flow of the Holy Spirit. Let's take a moment to refresh ourselves on that quote by the Essential Kabbalah, translated by Daniel C. Matt, in the flow of the Holy Spirit, one feels the divine life force coursing the pathways of existence through all desires, all worlds, all thoughts, all nations, all creatures. Since part of our exploration of mystic traditions includes breaking down language barriers, let us consider the same quote using terms belonging to the Mundaka Upanishad. In the unitive state, one feels the Lord of Love coursing the pathways of existence through all desires, all worlds, all thoughts, all nations, all creatures. As we can see, the language is interchangeable. Therefore, attaining the unitive state in the Mundaka Upanishad and experiencing union with God in Jewish Kabbalah are simply two ways of expressing the same transcendent experience, which we can also call divine revelation. Now let's continue with our exploration of the Mundaka Upanishad. Following the second line in our poem, those who enter the unitive state see only the resplendent Lord of Love. Desiring nothing in the physical world, they have become one with the Lord of Love. And so here we can understand that liberation has two qualities about it, renouncing our worldly desires and becoming one with God. This experience of becoming one with God, also called self-realization, is where the sacred root of Hinduism connects to the tree of life, attaining unity within the diversity of religious traditions. In Kabbalah, desiring nothing in the physical world can be compared to the state of ayin, or nothingness, wherein we renounce our self-will and become empty of all worldly desires, that God might clothe himself in us. Continuing with our exploration of this sacred poem, consider the following verse from the Mundaka Upanishad. Those who dwell on and long for sense pleasure are born in a world of separateness. But let them realize they are the self, and all separateness will fall away. The spiritual path to attaining this unitive state in the Mundaka Upanishad is similar to the path in Kabbalah. According to the Mundaka Upanishad, we must give up our personal desires or self-will. In Hinduism, this is called renunciation. We must turn away from the material world of sense pleasure. Only then will the heart become pure, and all separateness will fall away. The more we renounce from our lives for the sake of God, the closer we come to attaining that divine knowledge. And so this concludes our second point of intersection for our thesis. Liberation or moksha is receiving divine revelation through an experience of unification with God, higher consciousness, or becoming one in the tree of life. Only in this unitive state can we know God's presence in the world and comprehend divine consciousness. This experience and revelation lends itself to the writing and/or renewal of doctrine and ultimately defines the spiritual path of mankind. The spiritual path itself is very similar across religions, renouncing personal desire or self-will and purifying the heart. Just like other sacred traditions, the Mundaka Upanishad offers us a spiritual path of inner transformation or journey of the soul that we must follow in order to enter into the presence of the divine, and that spiritual path includes renunciation of worldly desires. Yet the Upanishad also contains another secret to attaining this realization. Through our sincere and heartfelt longing, we realize the self. Section 4: Renunciation and the Spiritual Path. Let's consider the next verse in this brief excerpt from the Mundaka Upanishad. Not through discourse, not through the intellect, not even through study of the scriptures can the self be realized. The self reveals himself to the one who longs for the self. Those who long for the self with all their heart are chosen by the self as their own. The Mundaka Upanishad reminds us that ultimately, this realization of God within us is a gift. It cannot simply be found through study of scripture or by talking about it or by thinking about it. It can't be granted to us by a religious organization, a priest, or a ritual of some kind. It must be bestowed as a gift, through grace. Only those who long for God with all of their heart shall receive this divine union and liberation. Only then will God be known as the innermost self of all. The secret of receiving enlightenment or liberation is truly within the will, within the pure and yearning heart. Those who long for the self with all their heart are chosen by the self as their own. And so this is an important aspect of spiritual practice we must try to remember. The self is not revealed through the intellect, but those who yearn for and long for the self with all their heart. This yearning must be completely authentic, arising from the very root of our being. God cannot be known through the intellect alone. He can only be known by this divine revelation to the seeking heart, attained by entering the unitive state. Many seek in their minds for comprehension of God, but you will never comprehend him this way. Only a pure and deeply devoted yearning heart will be chosen by the self as his own. Liberation is a gift. It comes through grace. In Christian tradition, the same can be said of salvation or divine revelation. Judeo-Christian tradition honors the Jewish prophets because it is understood that God cannot be comprehended through the intellect. Only through God's divine revelation bearing witness to the Spirit does God reveal himself to the prophet. In this same way, Brahman is realized by the illumined sage. By collapsing language, the one truth emerges brightly between the lines. Only in true sincerity, like a child crying out for its mother or father, does the heart have the power to call upon the Lord of love and receive this divine union. The Guru Sri Ramakrishna called this renouncing the ego. It can also be called sacrificing the ego. Then liberation is attained swiftly. So cry out to the Lord in your deepest suffering and become united with the self, receiving the heart of the world. Section 5. Purification of the heart. The following is quoted from an earlier section in the Mundaka Upanishad, Part 2, Verse 2. Bright but hidden, the self dwells in the heart. Everything that moves, breathes, opens, and closes lives in the Atman. He is the source of love, and may be known through love, but not through thought. He is the goal of life. Attain this goal. Perhaps by now we've understood that all spiritual practice is toward purification of the heart. But why? This is because the pure heart is the seat of the self, or Atman in Sanskrit. This is where God's awareness and spirit take home within you. Now, if you are a Buddhist, don't panic. As an aside, I will also be discussing Buddhism later on this podcast, which emphasizes the pure mind instead of the pure heart. As we will see in our exploration of Buddhism, particularly by revealing excerpts from the Pali Canon, the Buddha explains how an open heart leads to a luminous mind. And so purity of heart gives rise to the illumined mind of the Buddha. But we still have a ways to go before we reach that topic. Let us remain firmly focused on what is before us. Continuing with our discussion of the Mundaka Upanishad and the unitive state, once union is received, wherever you go, you will be in the presence of God, for God is within you. It is not a state that comes and goes. There is no backsliding. As described in Kabbalah, union is maintained continuously. It is a bodily experience of carrying the divine presence within the heart and experiencing the illumination of the spiritual body, from which arises great power of mind, great power of will, great power of faith. And so, to assist in purifying the heart, we practice love or worship of God. In Hinduism, this is called bhakti, because God can only be known through the heart, not the intellect, and so practicing bhakti, or devotion to God, is seen as a faster way of purifying the heart and receiving the gift of liberation. This is why in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the enlightened guru tells his disciples, "Try to cultivate love of God. You are born as a human being only to attain divine love." According to Sri Ramakrishna, an enlightened guru of the 19th century, it's good to center ourselves on love while we pursue spiritual practice. And this is because, as stated by the Mundaka Upanishad, God may be known through love, but not through thought. Therefore, we should see all spiritual practice as centered on a great undercurrent of love and reverence toward the divine. Indeed, we should try to see all life as divine, and this means engaging with everything in our life with great love. The more we act in love, the more we enter into a natural state of humility and renunciation. We give over our personal desires for the sake of a greater self. We become a servant to all life by putting the needs of others before our own, and we do this by means of love. We should seek to love everyone unconditionally, without qualifications. This is how we purify the heart. The Mundaka Upanishad tells us that God cannot be known through thought or intellect, but only through love. So then, what is the goal of gaining knowledge if that knowledge does not teach us how to love? Knowledge only serves the ego if it is not tempered by humility and compassion. Knowledge is not wisdom. Love is wisdom. The truest knowledge is love. And an intelligent person is not necessarily a good person. In the spiritual world, a virtuous heart is worth far more than a college degree. Likewise, what is the point of serving or doing good deeds if we are not motivated by love? All of the good work in the world falls to nothing if it is not done with pure, loving intention. If we serve out of shame, guilt, profit, or our own reputation, we do not serve at all. What is the goal of meditation if in meditation we do not discover within us the doorway to divine love? So much has been said of meditation in the West, but meditation simply means focus. We must focus our will toward the Lord of love. And when we receive that light, we see we were divine all along. As Sri Ramakrishna tells us, the only goal of a human life is to cultivate love of God. And we do not love Him if we do not know that sacrificial, unconditional love for all of life. This is true devotion. It doesn't matter if you understand what God is or not. Understanding does not come from you. Understanding is only granted through the pure heart. What matters is your intention. So, with pure intention, let your life be your spiritual practice, and let love be your religion. Section 6. 2 kinds of perfect souls attain liberation. Moving on from the Mundaka Upanishad, the following is a quote from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. In the company of his devotees, Sri Ramakrishna explains the distinction between spiritual seekers. There are two classes of perfect souls, those who attain perfection through spiritual practice and those who attain it through the grace of God. Some farmers irrigate their fields with great labor. Only then can they grow crops. But there are some who do not have to irrigate at all. Their fields are flooded with rain. They don't have to take the trouble to draw water. One must practice spiritual discipline laboriously to avoid the clutches of Maya. Those who attain liberation through God's grace do not need to labor, but they are few indeed. When considering all of the world religions and spiritual paths, we see this pattern emerge between the two kinds of perfected beings or spiritual seekers. Either the tree of life is attained by surrendering to God's grace, for with the heart one believes resulting in righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made resulting in salvation. Romans 10:10, or it is gained by practicing spiritual discipline. Think of the Buddha's years of work and intense meditation before gaining enlightenment. Although these two experiences of liberation are the same, the method of achieving them differs. As Ramakrishna explains, some perfected souls must draw up water from the well to irrigate their crops, others are flooded with rain or the Holy Spirit. However, both of these experiences have a common root, either fast or slow. They both lead to purity of the heart. No matter how liberation is attained, it must be understood that every life in the body is work, whether the soul is perfected through hard labor or through God's grace. We take on a body for the purpose of liberating ourselves or liberating others. Although we should dedicate our lives to spiritual practice toward purification of the heart, we do not earn the final vision of God by our own effort alone. Our good works are for the purpose of developing virtues, garnering humility, and emptying ourselves of ego or self-will that we may seek the self with all of our heart. Then the self shall reveal himself to those he chooses. Finally, we shall finish this section with one last quote from the Mundaka Upanishad, which encapsulates this beautiful experience of realization. What the sages sought they have found at last. No more questions have they to ask of life. With self-will extinguished, they are at peace. Seeing the Lord of Love in all around, serving the Lord of Love in all around, they are united with him forever. Section 7. Sacred Duty, the culmination of the spiritual path. Reading from the Mundaka Upanishad, Part 2, verses 1 to 7. They have attained the summit of wisdom by the steep path of renunciation. They have attained to immortality and are united with the Lord of Love. When they leave the body, the vital force returns to the cosmic womb. But their work becomes a beneficial force in life, to bring others together in the self. And so the spiritual path culminates in this. After attaining the summit of wisdom and the unitive state, the illumined sage returns to the cosmic womb. But first, their spiritual work becomes a beneficial force in life, helping others to realize Brahman for themselves and attain this state of spiritual ascension or higher consciousness. Wait. So then, does that mean after liberation, I'll still be working? I thought liberation was like retirement or a vacation. I was planning to lounge about in eternal bliss. Well, if this is your concept of liberation, then I would say you don't really yearn for the Lord of Love, but rather you just want to be lazy and blissful. And there are plenty of drugs for that. So, if you want to be lazy and blissful and lounge about in oneness with nature, we can eat some special mushrooms and go camping. If you're interested in self-realization or liberation, keep listening. According to the Mundaka Upanishad, after attaining the summit of wisdom, the liberated person works to bring others to God. Their work becomes a beneficial force in life, to bring others together in the self. So no, after liberation, you do not laze about all day in a blissful trance experiencing oneness with reality. You work to bring others to God, because you see how this is the purpose all life attains to, and how blessed are we in this work. But I do not make this claim alone. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna calls this beneficial work by another name, sacred duty or dharma. It is the divine calling of every liberated soul that our work becomes a beneficial force in life to bring others to God. The Lord of Love awakens us for the purpose of awakening others. It is God's will that we bring others into this sacred knowledge of the heart. Once the unitive state is realized, all work becomes service to the highest good. And this is very similar to what Paul says in the Bible about salvation. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, that no one would boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared before that we would walk in them. Ephesians 2:9-10, Webis. So here we see that the Mundaka Upanishad, Lord Krishna and the Apostle Paul are in agreement. After liberation or salvation, we are given works to fulfill by the higher will. This is our sacred duty, our dharma, done for the uplifting of humanity to bring others together in the self. Salvation must be responded to by works. Liberation must also be responded to by works. Fruit must fall from the tree. We have a right to the work, but not to the results. The fruits of our labor should be surrendered to the Lord of Love. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 47. And so this is true realization, the will to sacrifice oneself for the benefit of all beings. And this holy desire arises within the pure heart when the unitive state is attained. Then spiritual work becomes effortless, and true joy and freedom experienced within the unitive state, giving rise to endless enthusiasm for spiritual service. On the other side of this unitive experience, one sees the Lord of Love in all things. God's Spirit is seen resonating throughout all of existence, truth bursting from the seams, sewn into the pattern of nature, imbued in the very character of life. Before you see the Lord of Love, you cannot know how all of existence organizes itself around his attributes. How can a realized soul not wish to share this grace with others? God is love, and love harmonizes all of life into a functioning whole, creating a symphony of physical laws, microcosmic kingdoms upon kingdoms all stacking on top of each other, growing and transcending into the infinite. The song of life is eternal. It progresses into itself, it dances, it creates, it plays. The song of life is joy immeasurable, and it is singing now in your heart, guiding you through these words, awakening the truth within. 1,000 blessings to all who seek the Lord of Love. On my life and the life of my life, I promise you liberation. Section 8. On the Tree of Life, the Tree of Eternity. Finally, we have reached our third point of intersection, unveiling the symbol of the sacred tree in Hinduism. The following is an excerpt from the Katha Upanishad, one of the oldest religious texts in the world. The tree of eternity has its roots above and its branches on earth below. Its pure root is Brahman the immortal, from whom all the worlds draw their life and whom none can transcend. For the self is supreme. In the Katha Upanishad, we see the pure root of the tree of life is Brahman the immortal, or God himself. This tree is also described as inverted, with its roots above and its branches in the earth below. We will discuss both of these traits and more about the cosmic tree in the following final 10 minutes of our podcast episode. A similar quote describing the cosmic tree is from the Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna references the sacred tree while discussing spiritual concepts with Arjuna. Roots in the air, branches below, the tree of eternity is unchanging, they say. Its leaves the Vedic hymns, and he who knows it knows the Vedas. Its branches stretch below and above, nourished by nature's qualities, budding with sense objects. Aerial roots tangled in actions reach downward into the world of men. Its form is unknown here in the world. Unknown are its end, its beginning, its extent. Cut down this tree that has such deep roots with the sharp axe of detachment. Chapter 15 in the Bhagavad Gita. As stated in the introduction to this book, the symbol of the sacred tree often appears in association with divine revelation, or as a teaching system or metaphor for God's nature in different traditions around the world. In the Gita, the symbol of the sacred tree is described as inverted or upside down, roots in the air, branches below. Krishna also tells us the pure root is Brahman. So what does this mean, and how can we apply it to the world we perceive around us? Section 9. Imagining the inverted tree. First, imagine you are standing in a field full of yellow grass. It's noon, and the hot sun is shining high above you. In the distance, across this flat golden field, you see a giant tree looming on the horizon. It grows up and up and up. It is absolutely massive, and as you walk toward the tree, you begin to realize that below your very feet, its roots are spanning through the ground. The tree is so massive, its upper branches seem to reach beyond the sky, through the atmosphere into the very cosmos. Its roots are easily large enough to encapsulate the whole earth. And here you are, a tiny human being, gazing upon this tree of eternity, filled with awe. As Krishna describes, its branches stretch below and above, nourished by nature's qualities, budding with sense objects. Aerial roots tangled in actions reach downward into the world of men. And this is how the tree of eternity is perceived when looking through the physical body, when we are still shrouded by the illusion of the ego, and we dwell within the world of Maya, which is the world as we know it now. The roots are anchored in the darkness of the earth, Maya, while the tree branches extend far above into an unknowable world of wind and light. Krishna tells us the tree is nourished by nature's qualities and budding with sense objects. What that means is we are still attached to our body's material nature. We experience greed, lust, desire for fame, money, beauty, fine foods, and luxuries. We see the material world as the source of things, and the spiritual world is merely a suggestion. Section 10. The heavy roots of Maya. We perceive ourselves as a body, separate, unique, and distinct. As long as we perceive ourselves as a body, we belong to the roots, to the heaviness of Maya and the darkness of the earth. Our awareness remains veiled within our bodies, the true heart of ourselves buried underground like little seed pods, kept in a dormant state of spiritual blindness. Because we are blind, we are also clumsy. We are always tangled up in the consequences of our actions. And we tell ourselves we are happy like this. Everything is how it should be. Except it's not really how it should be, because something is missing. We know this to be so. Something is missing because at the very heart of ourselves, we don't know who we are. At the very root of ourselves is a lingering shadow. We don't really understand what life is. We don't really know how we got to be here. We don't really know what survives after death. And so we don't really understand the tree, even as we look upon it, for we dwell within this heavy realm of Maya and spiritual blindness. And this is how a human life is. We live in the heavy realm among the dark roots of creation. It is a shadow realm of impermanence, bound to the whims of karma, constrained by natural law, not knowing ourselves, not remembering our true nature. In the dark roots of Maya, existence is like a storm that is constantly moving and changing. All sorts of trials plague us day to day. Suffering after suffering arises in waves, and we chase after material comforts. Living beings are constantly giving birth and then dying. Our joy is fleeting, so is our health. We are governed by desires, cravings, survival, individual hopes and destinies, and ultimately, a well-intentioned sort of selfishness. In the blink of an eye, decades pass. Youth flees behind us and we enter middle age. Eventually, we become an elder. We contemplate our own mortality. We turn to that big tree on the horizon, under whose shade we have been living this whole time, and we wonder, what is real? What is eternal? How can any of this world exist if it is emerging from nothing, then decaying into nothing? How can any of this be real or substantial if it perishes so quickly? What is the truth behind the shadow? Section 11. The illumination of the self. Its form is unknown here in the world. Unknown are its end, its beginning, its extent. Cut down this tree that has such deep roots with the sharp axe of detachment. The Bhagavad Gita, 15th teaching. By yearning to understand ourselves and seeking after the self of all, the flame of inner awareness ignites. The shadow disperses from our eyes and our vision of the tree changes. As we take up a spiritual practice and detach from the physical body, We see that whereas the earth is always changing, it is not so for the tree of eternity. The tree's branches stretch far above the clouds, beyond the stormy weather and blowing winds of fate, into the pure light of the cosmos. Nothing can corrupt this light. Nothing can change it or affect it. It is eternal, unchangeable. It does not die. It is not born. It is all pervasive, expansive, true, and real. It is the light of Brahman, the immortal, the light of God, the light of consciousness. And then we realize we have been looking at the tree all wrong. We are upside down. This pure primordial light is the true ground, indistinguishable, unalterable, absolute, eternal. The tree is inverted, the branches are the roots, receiving the light of Brahman, and the tree is growing down into the earth from the light unchangeable. The tree came from the light, and to the light it is always returning. And maybe this earth, the realm of Maya, is nothing but illusion. What looks like solid ground is actually as empty as air. And maybe we are not a body. Maybe we are something else, something far beyond this physical existence. Maybe we are the light as well. Maybe in truth, everything is this light, undifferentiated from itself. Which means as long as we exist within the ego, we exist upside down, in blindness and bondage, ignorant to our true nature as spiritual, eternal beings. Blind to the Lord of love who resides as the self of all. Ignorant to the true nature of the world. After self-realization, the tree rights itself, and we see how everything we believe to be true about this life in the body is upside down, inverted, untrue. To come into the human body is to live in opposition of the truth. You can rely on this fact, for it is one of the secrets of the illusion of Maya. On earth, we see the worship of money, fame, and materialism. In truth, we must only worship God, the heart of life itself. In the material world, it is natural to become angry when provoked. In truth, we must never harbor anger within us as it defiles the body. In the material world, it is natural to lust for a mate. In truth, we are beings of pure spirit far beyond gender, with no need for procreation. In the material world, we struggle with our grief, our mortality, our desires, our passions. In truth, we must always remain disciplined and renounce all worldly desires, and a spiritual life is a life of immense discipline. In the material world, knowledge is won through arduous study, and we look to external things like fitness and nutrition to sustain our health. In truth, knowledge arises instantaneously from the illumined mind, and the pure spirit gives life to the whole body. Through spiritual practice, we gain longevity. This is why we must cut off the roots of the tree, slice through the illusion of Maya, by detaching from the material world and sacrificing the ego. Then the whole tree rights itself. We must not gaze upon the world, but look within. We must slice through the material aspects of ourselves, seeing their inherent emptiness. We must cut through our suffering, our grievances, our hate, our desires, our little pettinesses, and grab hold of the pure root that resides within our heart of hearts. Here, the pure root of Brahman awaits. Then the tree will be seen right side up. Because you see, the tree of eternity was never outside of you. It was always inside. And the world you perceived in darkness was only because of the darkness inside of you. And the truth in the world will only be perceived when you find the truth inside. The story of the inverted tree is this. When we look at the world through spiritual blindness, we cannot see the unity inherent within creation, not even if we look very hard. And yet, this unity exists. Before we can see it, the inverted tree must be righted. We must correct our vision. We must see through the eyes of knowledge that reside within the heart. And this means discovering the true light of Brahman within. We do this with the sharp axe of detachment, singing over and over, not this, not this. When the tree of eternity rights itself, we experience full illumination. We experience a great burst of spiritual energy by purification of the heart, called liberation or self-realization. It is an internal transformation through which we attain the unitive state. Only when the heart is purified can we know the truth. Then we have right thinking and right perception. Section 12. Gnosis in the Tree of Eternity. Roots in the air, branches below, the tree of eternity is unchanging, they say. Its leaves the Vedic hymns, and he who knows it knows the Vedas. Lord Krishna tells us about the sacred tree. Its leaves are the Vedic hymns, and he who knows it knows the Vedas. What could this mysterious verse mean? Without delving too deeply into the Vedas, it would seem that knowledge of Brahman, the immortal, is to be found within the sacred tree, that he who knows the tree knows the Vedas. Therefore, once we write the inverted tree, full knowledge of Brahman is attained. And so here is another trait of self-realization or liberation. One does not simply become pure-hearted, nor does one simply work for the good of others, nor does one simply experience bliss, oneness with nature, or union with God. There is knowledge, vast knowledge, of spiritual law and the nature of reality contained within the pure mind. And from this knowledge stems all holy scriptures, including the Vedas themselves. So this would be the nature of the illuminated mind after realization, which proceeds from the pure heart. Once a spiritual seeker is granted self-realization, the pure light of Brahman will teach the soul. This inner spiritual knowledge perceived through the pure heart can be called gnosis. Deeper even than this realization of Brahman is the continual knowledge that flows from the tree of life once it is awakened in the heart. Brahman's knowledge is endless, and it continues to develop even after the state of samadhi or union with God. The tree of eternity bears fruit on every branch. The fruit it contains are worlds upon worlds upon worlds. And as we perceive this tree of consciousness, what we see is that the closer we ascend to the light of Brahman, then higher forms of existence emerge. There are worlds beyond this one, resonating at pure levels of spirit, where life takes on endless forms in bodies that resist decay, suffering, and death. These bodies are sustained and dictated by the state of the heart. The universe is nothing but life. Your heart is the engine of creation, and it dictates the reality in which you dwell. The journey and progression of our internal state is endless. We are the endless play of Brahman's imagination. We create with him, and after liberation from a human life, we become that life-sustaining tree, all worlds contained within us, and we go on to sustain new worlds growing upon the branches of eternity. This is what it means to become realized, that inevitably, we sustain life as well. We are light itself, dancing and playing across the cosmos, interconnected with every dimension, one with all the realms therein. We are the ongoing play of the imagination of God, and once this truth is realized, we return to the cosmic womb, merged forever within the great tree of being. Thank you for listening to the Book of the Tree of Life by Theresa Lorraine, an exploration of spirituality around the world. I post a new episode every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. In the coming podcast episodes, we will explore the major aspects of different routes to the Tree of Life, from Christianity to Kabbalah, Sufism, Vedanta, Taoism, Buddhism, and even atheism. Please subscribe for upcoming content. In the next episode, we will explore Christianity in the context of the Tree of Life.